The first scream of a rooster had barely faded into the cool dawn when Nyla stepped outside the small room she called her own. A pale mist rested over the village, wrapping the fields and trees in silver shadows. Birds greeted the morning with cheerful songs, but their music brought her no comfort. For Nyla, a new sunrise meant another day of labor, criticism, and silent endurance. At 22 years old, she carried burdens that would have exhausted people twice her age. Before most families opened their doors, she was already sweeping the compound with a worn broom whose bristles had nearly disappeared. After that came the long walk to the stream for water, the cooking, the washing, and the endless responsibilities waiting on the farm. Her days followed the same relentless pattern. Nothing changed. Nothing improved. As she swept the dusty ground, a sharp voice cut through the morning air. Nyla, the sound instantly tightened her chest. "Yes, Mama. Why are you moving so slowly? Have you brought the water yet?" "I was finishing the yard first. Did I ask for an explanation?" The woman stepped into the doorway, her eyes cold and impatient. "Move faster." Nyla lowered her head immediately. "I am sorry. Sorry never finishes work." Without another word, Nyla dropped the broom and hurried toward the stream carrying 2 empty buckets. The path stretched through tall grass sparkling with dew. The morning air felt fresh, yet her heart felt heavy. She walked quickly, careful not to anger her stepmother further. This had been her life for years. There was a time when everything had been different. She remembered evenings beneath a large mango tree. She remembered laughter drifting through their yard. Most of all, she remembered her mother. Her mother had possessed a gentle spirit that seemed capable of calming every storm. Whenever Nyla felt afraid, she would pull her close and tell stories about courage, kindness, and faith. Those memories remained bright despite the passing years. "You have a beautiful heart," her mother often told her. "Never let anyone change that." The words lived inside Nyla even now, but sickness had stolen everything. She was only a child when her mother passed away. The loss shattered their small family. Her father spent months grieving, struggling to care for himself and his daughter. Relatives eventually convinced him that he needed help. They urged him to remarry. At first, the new woman seemed kind. She smiled often. She brought gifts. She braided Nyla's hair. For a brief period, Nyla believed life might become whole again. Then the woman gave birth to her own daughter. Everything changed. The smiles disappeared. The affection vanished. The kindness slowly transformed into resentment. Nyla stopped being treated like a daughter and became little more than unpaid labor. The chores multiplied. The punishments grew harsher. Criticism followed her everywhere. Her father initially defended her, yet manipulation can be powerful when repeated every day. Little by little, lies poisoned his trust. "Your daughter disrespects me. Your daughter refuses to obey. Your daughter is jealous." The accusations never stopped. Eventually, he began believing them. That was the deepest wound of all. The hard work hurt. The insults hurt. But watching her father drift away hurt far more. The man who once carried her on his shoulders now barely looked at her. The father who once called her his princess now seemed disappointed whenever she entered a room. By the time Nyla returned from the stream, sunlight was spreading across the village. Sweat dampened her forehead as she carefully placed the buckets beside the kitchen. Nearby, her stepsister sat beneath a tree enjoying roasted corn while scrolling through her phone. Her colorful beads clicked softly whenever she moved. "Good morning, sister," Nyla said politely. The young woman barely glanced up. "Why are you talking to me?" Nyla remained silent. There was no point arguing. Experience had taught her that silence usually caused less pain. The hours passed slowly. By afternoon, the sun blazed mercilessly overhead. Heat shimmered above the fields, while most villagers rested in the shade. Nyla, however, worked alone on the family farm. Her hands were covered with blisters. Her back ached, dust clung to her skin. Still, she continued pulling weeds. Then laughter drifted across the field. She looked up. Her stepmother and stepsister stood nearby carrying umbrellas. Neither offered assistance. Instead, they watched her. "Look at her," the younger woman laughed. "She looks more like a farm animal than a person." The older woman chuckled. "Maybe that is all she will ever be." The words pierced her heart. Nyla lowered her gaze and continued working. She had learned long ago that defending herself only created new problems. Eventually, the two women walked away still laughing. Only after they disappeared did Nyla allow tears to gather in her eyes. She quickly wiped them away. Crying changed nothing. The evening finally arrived. Orange sunlight painted the sky while villagers returned home carrying tools and baskets. Nyla followed the familiar path back to the compound, exhausted beyond words. Dinner preparations began immediately. As always, she served everyone before serving herself. Only after the others had started eating did she sit down. She had barely lifted a spoon when her stepmother frowned. "Why are you eating before cleaning the kitchen?" Nyla blinked. "Everyone is already eating, so I thought—" "You thought wrong." Before she could continue, her father slammed his hand against the table. The sound startled everyone. Nyla froze. "How many times must your mother correct you?" "I am sorry, father. You are always sorry." His voice carried frustration and disappointment. "You make life difficult for everyone here." The accusation struck harder than any physical blow. She wanted to explain. She wanted to defend herself. Yet she already knew nobody would listen. Without another word, she stood and returned to the kitchen. Behind her, a quiet laugh followed. That laugh hurt more than the scolding. Night eventually settled over the village. The air cooled. Crickets filled the darkness with their song. One by one, the lights inside nearby homes disappeared. When everyone else had gone to sleep, Nyla slipped outside and sat beneath the stars. This was the only part of the day that truly belonged to her. The village felt peaceful at night. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. Moonlight silvered the rooftops. For the first time since dawn, she could breathe freely. She lifted her eyes toward the sky. Whenever life became unbearable, she imagined her mother watching from somewhere beyond the stars. The memory brought tears. "Mother," she whispered softly, "I wish you were here." One tear rolled down her cheek, then another and another. Despite everything she endured, one question haunted her more than any other. Why was she never enough? Why had her father stopped believing in her? Why did her stepmother seem determined to break her spirit? No answers came, only silence, yet deep inside her heart, something refused to die. Hope. It was small, fragile, almost invisible. But it remained alive. She believed that one day her suffering would end. One day someone would recognize her worth. One day life would become more than survival. Standing beneath the moonlight, she wiped away her tears and slowly rose to her feet. Tomorrow would bring more work, more criticism, more exhaustion, but she would endure because strength had become her habit. And unknown to everyone sleeping peacefully in that quiet village, destiny had already begun moving in the shadows. Far beyond the roads she knew, events were unfolding that would change her life forever. The miracle she had prayed for was already on its way, and the first step toward that miracle had begun long before anyone noticed. Life in the village continued with the same familiar rhythm, but unseen forces were already shifting beneath the surface. Every morning before sunrise, Nyla woke to begin another exhausting cycle of chores. She swept the compound, fetched water, cooked meals, washed clothes, and worked in the fields. Day after day blended together until time itself seemed meaningless. She believed nothing would ever change. She could not have been more wrong. One particularly hot afternoon, the village rested beneath a blazing sun. Farmers had retreated from their fields. Children played beneath large trees, while elders gathered in shaded areas, sharing stories and local gossip. The peaceful atmosphere shattered when an unfamiliar sound echoed across the dusty roads. An engine. Heads turned immediately. A large black luxury SUV appeared at the edge of the village. People stopped what they were doing. Children abandoned their games. Women rose from their seats. Men stepped into the road. Vehicles like that rarely entered their community. Curiosity spread instantly. The SUV moved slowly through the village, raising clouds of dust behind it. The dark paint reflected sunlight like polished glass. Children ran alongside it, laughing and pointing. Who owns that car? Is someone important visiting? Why are they here? Questions traveled faster than the vehicle itself. The SUV finally stopped in front of Nyla's father's compound. A wave of surprise swept through the crowd. Nobody expected that destination. The vehicle doors opened. A tall, handsome man stepped out. He looked completely different from anyone in the village. His tailored suit fit perfectly. His polished shoes gleamed beneath the afternoon sun. An expensive watch sparkled on his wrist. Confidence surrounded him like an invisible shield. Several professionally dressed men followed behind him. The crowd grew larger by the second. Inside the compound, Nyla's stepmother rushed outside after hearing the commotion. The moment she saw the luxury vehicle, her eyes widened dramatically. For a brief moment, she seemed unable to speak. The young man smiled politely. "Good afternoon." "Good afternoon," she replied nervously. "My name is Xavier." The name sounded refined and important. People leaned closer, eager to hear more. Then Xavier revealed the reason for his visit. "I came to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." Silence exploded across the gathering. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Then gasps erupted everywhere. The stepmother nearly lost her balance. "What?" The businessman smiled. "I wish to marry your daughter, Brielle." The announcement spread through the village like wildfire. Within minutes, everyone knew. By evening, every conversation centered on the same shocking news. A wealthy businessman from the city wanted to marry Brielle. Inside the house, Brielle could barely contain her excitement. She stared at Xavier as though she had won the greatest prize imaginable. He was wealthy, handsome, successful, everything she had ever dreamed about. Meanwhile, Nyla stood quietly near the back of the room. As usual, nobody introduced her. Nobody acknowledged her presence. She might as well have been invisible. Yet despite everything, she felt genuinely happy for her stepsister. Perhaps marriage would bring maturity. Perhaps it would bring peace. Perhaps their family would finally change. Those hopes disappeared almost immediately. The very next morning, Brielle became even more arrogant. She spent hours admiring herself in mirrors. She talked endlessly about city life. She boasted about luxury homes, expensive clothing, and future vacations. Most importantly, she began treating Nyla worse than ever. "Nyla, wash these clothes. Nyla, clean my room. Nyla, bring me water. Nyla, hurry up." Every command carried new pride and superiority. Every order reminded Nyla exactly where she stood. Wedding preparations soon consumed the entire village. Tailors worked late into the night, decorations arrived, food vendors made arrangements, musicians rehearsed, relatives traveled from neighboring communities. People called it the wedding of the year. While everyone celebrated Brielle's good fortune, Nyla handled most of the work. She cooked, she cleaned, she carried supplies, she helped prepare decorations. Nobody thanked her. Nobody noticed. The more she worked, the less visible she seemed. One evening, several women gathered beneath a tree outside the compound, discussing wedding plans. The conversation revolved entirely around Brielle. "Your daughter is blessed," one woman said. "She will live like royalty." The stepmother smiled proudly. "Of course she will." Then another woman asked a simple question. "What about Nyla?" The atmosphere changed instantly. The proud smile disappeared. The stepmother glanced toward Nyla, who was washing clothes nearby. A strange expression crossed her face. An idea had formed. "If Brielle is leaving this house," she said slowly, "then Nyla should leave too." Several women exchanged confused looks. "What do you mean?" "I am tired of supporting an adult woman." The words hit Nyla like cold rain. She continued washing clothes, pretending not to hear. One woman frowned. "Who will marry her?" The stepmother laughed. "That is not my concern." The conversation left many people uncomfortable. Despite her difficult circumstances, villagers respected Nyla. They admired her work ethic. They admired her kindness. They admired her quiet strength, yet few dared challenge her stepmother openly. Several days later, the woman did something that shocked the entire village. She stood in the central square and gathered everyone's attention. People approached curiously. Some expected wedding announcements. Others expected invitations. Nobody anticipated what came next. "My daughter Brielle will soon be married." Applause followed. The stepmother smiled proudly. Then her expression hardened. "Since one daughter is leaving my house, the other must leave too." The crowd fell silent. A feeling of discomfort spread through the gathering. The woman raised her voice. "Any man interested in marrying Nyla should come forward on Brielle's wedding day." The square became completely silent. Several people stared in disbelief. Others exchanged shocked glances. Some thought it was a cruel joke. Nyla felt heat rush into her face. Her heart seemed to stop. She wished the ground would open beneath her feet. Never in her life had she experienced such public humiliation. The announcement traveled through the village within hours. Everywhere she went, people discussed it. Some criticized her stepmother. Some laughed. Some expressed sympathy. But everyone talked. That evening, Nyla sat alone beneath the stars. The same stars she had looked at countless times before. The same stars her mother once admired. Yet tonight felt different. The humiliation weighed heavily on her heart. She replayed the announcement again and again. The stares, the whispers, the embarrassment. What had she done to deserve this? The question echoed through her mind. Years of hardship had taught her endurance. Years of suffering had taught her patience. But this felt different. This felt like a final attempt to destroy what little dignity remained. Part of her feared nobody would come forward. Another part feared someone might come only out of pity. Neither possibility offered comfort. Inside the house, laughter drifted from Brielle's room. Wedding plans, dreams of wealth, excitement. Meanwhile, Nyla sat alone in darkness. Uncertainty surrounded her future. Would she remain trapped forever? Would anyone truly choose her? Would happiness always belong to someone else? The questions multiplied, answers never came. Eventually, she closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. Not for wealth, not for luxury, simply for peace. Simply for a chance. Simply for a future that belonged to her. Far away, beyond the roads she had never traveled, destiny was already moving closer. A man she had never met was preparing to enter her story. A man whose arrival would change everything she believed about love, sacrifice, and worth. But for now, Nyla knew none of that. She sat beneath the moonlight, holding on to hope with both hands. And as the village settled into sleep, the countdown toward the most unforgettable day of her life quietly began. The wedding day arrived beneath a sky painted with brilliant shades of gold and blue. Long before sunrise, excitement had already spread throughout the village. Women hurried between compounds, carrying large pots of food. Men arranged chairs beneath colorful canopies. Musicians tuned their instruments while children ran through the dusty roads, laughing with anticipation. This was not an ordinary wedding. A wealthy businessman from the city was marrying one of their own. People traveled from neighboring communities just to witness the celebration. Inside the family compound, Brielle sat before a large mirror surrounded by women helping her prepare. Her wedding gown shimmered beautifully beneath the morning light. Expensive jewelry sparkled around her neck and wrists. Every few minutes she admired her reflection. A smile never left her face. "I always knew I was meant for greatness," she declared proudly. The women around her laughed. "You are blessed. You will live like a queen. You will never return to village life again." Brielle enjoyed every second of the attention. Meanwhile, in another corner of the compound, Nyla stood over a cooking fire preparing food for hundreds of guests. Nobody praised her. Nobody celebrated her. Nobody even noticed her. She wore a simple dress that had clearly seen many years of use. There was no jewelry, no special hairstyle, no makeup, just another day of work. As she stirred a large pot of soup, laughter drifted from Brielle's room. A familiar ache settled inside her chest. Not because she envied the wedding, not because she wanted luxury, but because she knew what awaited her later. The public announcement, the humiliation, the entire village watching. Her stomach tightened every time she thought about it. What if nobody came forward? The question haunted her. Still, she continued working. The hours passed. By midday, the wedding celebration was in full swing. Luxury vehicles lined the roads leading into the village. Guests filled every available chair. Music echoed across the community while colorful decorations danced in the breeze. When Xavier arrived in another expensive SUV, cheers erupted from the crowd. Women whispered admiringly. Men nodded with approval. Children ran alongside the vehicle. The stepmother practically glowed with pride. She moved through the crowd greeting guests as though she personally owned every luxury car parked outside. "My daughter is marrying a successful businessman," she reminded everyone. "Soon she will live in the city. Soon she will live in wealth." The ceremony began shortly afterward. Blessings were spoken. Photographs were taken. Music played. People applauded. For several hours, everything appeared perfect. Eventually, the marriage ceremony ended, and guests moved toward the reception area. Food filled long tables, laughter echoed everywhere. People danced, children played. The atmosphere overflowed with celebration. Then came the moment nobody had forgotten. Nyla's stepmother slowly rose to her feet. Almost immediately, conversations began fading. Guests exchanged nervous glances. Many already knew what was coming. The woman cleared her throat. "My friends and neighbors." The crowd gradually grew quiet. "As you all know, today my daughter Brielle has found a husband." Applause followed. The woman smiled proudly. Then her expression changed. "Several weeks ago, I made another announcement." Silence spread across the gathering. Nyla lowered her eyes. She wished she could disappear. "I said that any man interested in marrying Nyla should come forward today." Whispers immediately swept through the crowd. Every eye turned toward her. The attention felt unbearable. Heat rushed into her face. People stared as though she were part of the entertainment. The stepmother folded her arms. "Well?" Nobody moved. Several seconds passed, then more. The silence became painful. Guests looked at one another awkwardly. Some appeared embarrassed. Others looked sympathetic. Still, nobody stepped forward. Nyla felt her heart slowly breaking. This was worse than she imagined. The humiliation pressed against her chest until breathing felt difficult. Nearby, Brielle smirked. "Perhaps nobody wants her." The comment was loud enough for many people to hear. Several guests laughed. The sound cut deeply. Nyla fought back tears. She refused to cry in front of them. "Not today. Not again." Then suddenly, a voice echoed from the back of the crowd. "I do." The words sliced through the silence like thunder. Every head turned instantly. Confused murmurs spread throughout the gathering. A man slowly stepped forward. He looked completely out of place among the wealthy wedding guests. His clothes were simple. His sandals were worn. His hands carried the marks of hard labor. Beside him stood an old wooden wheelbarrow. The villagers recognized him immediately. His name was Mason. Everyone knew him. He earned a living transporting goods between villages. He worked hard. He spoke little, and he was poor. Very poor. The moment people realized who had volunteered, laughter exploded throughout the crowd. Brielle laughed first, then her mother joined. Soon others followed. "A wheelbarrow pusher? You must be joking. Look at him." The laughter grew louder. Some guests pointed openly, others shook their heads. Yet Mason never reacted. His expression remained calm. His eyes remained steady. Ignoring every insult, he continued walking toward the front. Nyla stared in disbelief. She had seen Mason around the village many times. He was known for being respectful, quiet, honest. Yet she never imagined he would volunteer to marry her. When he finally reached the front, Brielle's mother was still laughing. "You want to marry Nyla?" "Yes." His answer was simple, confident, certain. The crowd laughed again. Brielle wiped tears from her eyes. "This is perfect." She pointed proudly toward Xavier. "Look at my husband." Then she pointed toward Mason and his wheelbarrow. "And look at hers." Fresh laughter erupted. Nyla felt humiliated. Every word stabbed her heart. Yet something about Mason surprised her. He never appeared embarrassed. He never appeared angry. Instead, he stood proudly, as though none of the mockery mattered. Finally, he turned toward her. For the first time, their eyes met. There was no pity in his gaze. No judgment, no ridicule, only kindness. "Nyla," he said softly. The crowd gradually quieted. "I may not have wealth." His voice remained steady. "I may not own expensive cars." He briefly glanced toward the luxury vehicles. "I may not have a mansion." The gathering listened carefully. "But I can promise you something." Nyla found herself unable to look away. "If you become my wife, I will respect you every day of my life." The compound fell silent. Even the people who had laughed moments earlier stopped speaking. The sincerity in his words was impossible to ignore. For years, nobody had spoken to Nyla with such kindness. Nobody. Not her stepmother, not her father, not her stepsister, nobody. A strange warmth spread through her heart. It was not love, not yet, but it felt like hope. The stepmother interrupted impatiently. "Well, Nyla, are you accepting your wheelbarrow pusher?" The crowd waited. Nyla looked around. She saw amusement in Brielle's eyes, disappointment on her father's face. cruel satisfaction on her stepmother's face. Then she looked back at Mason. For the first time in years, someone had chosen her, not because he was forced, not because he was pressured, because he wanted to. Slowly, she nodded. Yes. The single word stunned the gathering. Gasps erupted. Some guests laughed again. Others looked shocked. But Nyla no longer cared. A gentle smile appeared on Mason's face. For the first time that day, she smiled too. The marriage arrangements were completed before sunset. Unlike Brielle's extravagant ceremony, everything remained simple. No expensive decorations, no luxury convoy, no lavish gifts, just two people choosing to begin a life together. As evening painted the sky orange and gold, Brielle departed with her wealthy husband while villagers admired the waiting SUVs. At the same time, Nyla prepared to leave beside Mason. His only vehicle was the old wheelbarrow. The contrast could not have been greater. Laughter followed her once again. Mockery followed her once again. Yet strangely, it no longer hurt as much, because every time she glanced at Mason, she saw something she had never found inside her father's home. Respect. As they walked away from the celebration together, Nyla looked back one final time. Behind her stood the people who had spent years convincing her she was worthless. Ahead lay uncertainty, poverty, hardship, questions. Yet deep inside, she felt something unexpected. Peace. What she did not know was that the man walking beside her carried a secret powerful enough to change everything. For now, he was simply Mason, the poor wheelbarrow pusher. And as darkness settled over the village, they took their first steps toward a destiny neither of them could possibly imagine. The road leading away from the village seemed longer than Nyla remembered. Evening shadows stretched across the dusty path, while the final colors of sunset faded behind distant trees. The celebration, the laughter, and the humiliation slowly disappeared behind them. For the first time in years, Nyla was no longer living under her stepmother's roof. The realization felt strange. Part of her felt relieved. Part of her felt terrified. She walked quietly beside Mason while carrying a small bag containing everything she owned. The old wheelbarrow rolled steadily across the uneven ground. Neither of them spoke much. The silence felt awkward. After all, they had only become husband and wife a few hours earlier. Eventually, Mason broke the silence. "Are you tired?" "A little. You can rest if you need to." Nyla glanced at him. "You have been working all day too." A small smile appeared on his face. "I am used to it." The conversation ended there, yet something about his tone felt comforting. There was no command, no criticism, no anger, only concern. That alone felt unfamiliar. Night gradually settled across the countryside. Crickets sang from the tall grass. A cool breeze drifted through the trees. The moon rose above the horizon, casting silver light across the road. After another hour of walking, Mason pointed ahead. "We are almost there." Nyla followed his gaze. A small structure stood beneath several large trees. Her heart sank slightly. The house was modest, very modest. Its walls showed signs of age. The roof had clearly been repaired many times. The yard was simple. There were no decorations, no signs of luxury, no signs of wealth. Yet the property looked clean, orderly, peaceful. Mason stopped beside the entrance. "Welcome home." The words touched her more deeply than he realized. Home. Nobody had spoken that word to her with warmth in many years. As she stepped inside, she noticed how carefully everything had been arranged. The furniture was old but clean. The floor had been swept. The cooking area was organized. Fresh flowers sat inside a small container near the window. Mason seemed slightly nervous. "I know it is not much." Nyla looked around again, then she shook her head. "It is beautiful." For a moment, he simply stared at her, almost as if he did not believe she meant it. Then he smiled, a genuine smile, the first she had seen from him. That night, they shared a simple meal, corn, beans, fresh water, nothing extravagant, yet the meal felt surprisingly peaceful. Nobody insulted her, nobody criticized her, nobody ordered her around. The difference felt almost unreal. Before sleeping, Mason stood near the doorway. "You should rest." "What about you?" "I have work tomorrow, so do I." He nodded thoughtfully. "Then we both need sleep." Again, the kindness surprised her. Every conversation with him felt simple, natural, respectful. As Nyla lay down that night, she stared at the ceiling. The room was small. The bed was basic. The future remained uncertain, yet for the first time in years, she fell asleep without crying. The following weeks passed quietly. Life with Mason was not easy. Money remained scarce. Every day required hard work. Every coin mattered. Every expense required planning. Yet something remarkable happened. Nyla began smiling again. She helped care for the home. She planted vegetables. She sold produce at nearby markets. She accompanied Mason during deliveries. Together they worked from sunrise until evening, and together they slowly built a life. Meanwhile, news from the village continued reaching them. At first, Brielle seemed to be living a dream. Photographs circulated through social media, luxury restaurants, designer clothing, expensive vacations, beautiful houses. Every image appeared perfect. Whenever villagers discussed her, admiration filled their voices. Look how successful she is. Look how lucky she became. Look at the life she has now. The comparisons inevitably followed. Then people mentioned Nyla, the poor woman who married a wheelbarrow pusher, the unfortunate sister, the forgotten daughter. The contrast entertained many people. Nyla heard some of the comments. Yet they bothered her less with each passing day. Because appearances no longer mattered as much, peace mattered more. One afternoon, several months after the wedding, Nyla returned home carrying vegetables from the market. As she approached the house, she noticed something unusual. A luxury vehicle stood outside. Her footsteps slowed. Confusion filled her face. Visitors like this never came here, not to their home. She entered cautiously. Inside sat 3 men wearing expensive suits. Documents covered the table. The moment Mason saw her, he stood. "You are home." The visitors immediately rose as well. To Nyla's surprise, they greeted her respectfully. "Good afternoon, ma'am." She blinked. "Ma'am?" Nobody had ever addressed her that way. "Good afternoon." The men soon gathered their documents and prepared to leave. One of them turned toward Mason. "The meeting in the city remains scheduled. We will be ready." Mason nodded. "Excellent." After the visitors departed, silence filled the room. Nyla stared at her husband. Questions flooded her mind. Who were they? Business partners? Business partners? He smiled, something like that. The answer raised more questions than it solved. For the first time since their marriage, she noticed something strange. The men had treated Mason with enormous respect, not the kind shown to a laborer, not the kind shown to a delivery worker. Something else, something important. That evening, she observed him more carefully. Small details suddenly stood out. His speech was unusually polished. His knowledge extended far beyond village life. He read books regularly. He understood business discussions. He carried himself with quiet confidence. How had she never noticed before? A growing curiosity settled inside her. Yet she never asked. If Mason wanted to share something, he would. Days later, another surprising event occurred. A local child became seriously ill. The family lacked money for treatment. The entire community worried. Doctors required payment immediately. Nobody knew what to do. That evening, the child's father received anonymous financial assistance. Enough money to cover everything. The village celebrated the miracle. People wondered who had helped. Nobody knew. Except Nyla. Late that night, she accidentally discovered a receipt hidden among Mason's papers. The amount matched the exact cost of the treatment. She stared at the document. Her heart softened. He had helped the family without seeking recognition, without seeking praise, without telling anyone. The discovery revealed another side of her husband, a side few people ever saw. Weeks continued passing. More visitors arrived occasionally. More meetings occurred. More unexplained events accumulated. Little by little, Nyla realized one undeniable truth. The man everyone mocked at their wedding was not who he appeared to be. Something larger existed beneath the surface. Something hidden. One rainy evening, while thunder rolled across the sky, a black luxury SUV slowly entered their yard, the same type of vehicle once admired during Brielle's wedding. Nyla froze. Several professionally dressed men stepped out. One hurried toward the house carrying documents. When Mason opened the door, the man immediately lowered his head respectfully. Sir, we have a serious situation. The word struck Nyla like lightning. Sir. Not friend, not partner, sir. The man continued speaking urgently. The board is demanding your immediate return. Nyla's eyes widened. The board? Return where? For the first time since their marriage, Mason looked troubled, very troubled. He glanced toward Nyla, then toward the waiting executives outside. A long silence followed. Finally he spoke. It seems the truth can no longer remain hidden. The sentence sent a chill through Nyla's entire body, because suddenly she realized something extraordinary. The man she married was not merely a wheelbarrow pusher, and whatever secret he had been protecting was about to change both their lives forever. Rain hammered against the roof throughout the night. Thunder rolled across the dark countryside, while flashes of lightning illuminated the small house beneath the trees. Inside, silence filled the room. Nyla sat motionless. Her mind struggled to process everything she had just witnessed. The luxury SUV, the executives, the respect, the urgency. Most importantly, the revelation that her husband was hiding something significant. Mason remained calm despite the tension surrounding him. The men waited outside, clearly expecting immediate action. Yet he seemed more concerned about Nyla's reaction. Finally, he spoke. You deserve the truth. Nyla swallowed hard. The words felt heavy, important, life-changing. She slowly nodded. Mason pulled out a chair and sat across from her. For several seconds, he simply stared at the table, almost as if deciding where to begin. Then he lifted his eyes. Everything you know about me is true. The statement confused her. I do not understand. I was a wheelbarrow pusher. His voice remained steady. I worked those roads. I transported goods. I lived simply. None of that was a lie. Nyla listened carefully. Then what are you hiding? A sad smile appeared. Not what I am hiding, what I left behind. The room grew quieter. Outside, rain continued falling. Several years ago, Mason explained, my father built one of the largest transportation companies in the country. Nyla blinked. The sentence alone felt unbelievable. After he passed away, I inherited everything. The company, the properties, the investments, everything. For a moment, Nyla wondered if she had misunderstood. Everything? Yes. The answer came quietly. Yet its impact felt enormous. Mason leaned back slightly. When I inherited the business, people changed, friends changed, family changed, employees changed. Everyone wanted something, money, power, influence. Nothing felt genuine anymore. His eyes darkened with old disappointment. I stopped knowing who truly cared about me. Nyla remained silent. She could hear the pain beneath his words. So you left, he nodded. I walked away. For years, I lived quietly. I worked ordinary jobs. I wanted to understand people without wealth standing between us. The explanation felt almost impossible. Yet suddenly every mystery made sense. His confidence, his education, the executives, the visitors, the respect. Everything connected. Why did you never tell me? Mason smiled gently. Because I wanted you to know me, not my money. The answer struck her deeply. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then another question surfaced. Why did you volunteer that day? At the wedding. His expression softened. I noticed you long before the wedding. Nyla stared. What? I saw how you worked, how you treated people, how you endured cruelty without becoming cruel yourself. His voice carried quiet admiration. Most people become bitter after suffering. You did not. The room felt suddenly smaller, warmer, more emotional. When your stepmother made that announcement, he continued, I could not ignore it. Nobody deserved that humiliation, especially you. Tears gathered in Nyla's eyes, not because of sadness, because nobody had ever spoken about her that way. Nobody had ever noticed her strength. Nobody had ever acknowledged her resilience. Years of pain suddenly felt visible, seen, recognized. Outside, one of the executives approached the doorway. Sir? Mason looked up. The board members are becoming aggressive. They want immediate control. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Nyla sensed danger beneath the conversation. Aggressive? The executive sighed. Certain people believe your absence gives them an opportunity. Mason's expression hardened. The change surprised Nyla. For the first time, she saw authority in him. Not arrogance, not pride, authority. A natural leadership presence. The executive continued. Several directors are attempting to seize company assets. Some major contracts are at risk. Employees are worried. The board is divided. We need you. The room fell silent again. Mason stood slowly. He looked toward Nyla, then toward the rain outside. His peaceful life was ending. Both of them knew it. The next morning, the storm had passed. Bright sunlight illuminated the countryside. Birds sang. Fresh air drifted through the trees. Yet inside the house, everything felt different. Several luxury vehicles now waited outside. The contrast looked almost surreal beside the modest home. Villagers gathered nearby. Curiosity spread rapidly. People whispered, pointed, speculated. What is happening? Why are executives visiting Mason? Who is he? Questions multiplied. Nyla stood beside the doorway watching the growing crowd. Her entire life had changed overnight. Part of her still struggled to believe it. Mason approached. You do not have to come with me. She looked at him. Where? The city. The company headquarters. Everything I left behind. Nyla immediately understood. The choice carried enormous consequences. The peaceful life they had built would disappear. Challenges awaited. Conflict awaited. New enemies awaited. Yet her answer came quickly. I am your wife. His eyes softened. Then we face it together. Within hours, preparations were complete. The convoy departed. As the vehicles moved down the road, villagers watched in disbelief. Nobody understood what was happening. Nobody imagined the truth. News spread rapidly. By evening, the story reached Nyla's former village. When Brielle first heard the rumors, she laughed. Impossible, her mother agreed. Absolutely impossible. Yet the rumors refused to disappear. More reports arrived. More witnesses spoke. More details emerged. Executives, luxury vehicles, business meetings, corporate headquarters. Eventually, curiosity overcame pride. Brielle began investigating. What she discovered left her speechless. The company name connected directly to one of the country's wealthiest business groups. The owner, the missing chairman. The mysterious heir. Every trail pointed toward one person. Mason. The same man everyone mocked at her wedding. The same man she called a wheelbarrow pusher. The same man they laughed at publicly. Her face turned pale. Her mother could barely breathe. This cannot be true. But it was. Meanwhile, several hours away, Nyla experienced another shock. The convoy entered the city. Tall buildings rose toward the sky. Traffic filled the streets. Glass towers reflected sunlight from every direction. The scale felt overwhelming. Then they arrived. A massive corporate building dominated the skyline. Its polished exterior gleamed brilliantly. Company flags waved outside. Hundreds of employees moved through the entrance. Nyla stared upward. The building seemed endless. Mason exited the vehicle. Immediately, security personnel straightened. Managers hurried forward. Employees stopped walking. A ripple of recognition spread across the entrance. Then something extraordinary happened. Every employee nearby stood respectfully. Good morning, Chairman. The greeting echoed through the lobby. Dozens of voices, then hundreds. Good morning, Chairman. Nyla froze. The title echoed in her mind. Chairman, not businessman, not executive. Chairman, the highest authority, the most powerful person in the entire organization. Mason glanced toward her. A small smile appeared. Welcome to the truth. Before she could respond, another voice interrupted. A hostile voice. Chairman or not, your return changes nothing. The crowd immediately fell silent. Several executives looked alarmed. A sharply dressed man stepped forward. His expression radiated confidence and resentment. The board has already made its decision. Mason's eyes narrowed. The battle for control had begun, and standing in the center of the enormous lobby, surrounded by powerful enemies and hidden agendas, Nyla realized that the greatest challenge of their lives was only just beginning. The massive lobby fell into complete silence. Employees stopped moving. Executives exchanged uneasy glances. Security personnel stiffened. Everyone understood the significance of the confrontation unfolding before them. The man standing opposite Mason was not ordinary. His name was Victor Hale. For years he had served as one of the company's most influential board members. Ambitious, intelligent, dangerous. While Mason lived away from corporate life, Victor had quietly expanded his influence throughout the organization. Many executives now followed his leadership. Many investors trusted him. Many employees feared him. Victor smiled coldly. "You disappeared for years." His voice echoed through the lobby. "You abandoned your responsibilities. You abandoned this company. You abandoned thousands of employees." Several board members nodded, others remained silent. Mason's expression never changed. "Have I?" The calm response seemed to irritate Victor. "You left leadership in uncertain hands. You walked away. Now you expect everyone to welcome your return." The challenge hung heavily in the air. Dozens of people watched carefully. Nyla stood nearby, quietly observing. She had never witnessed this version of her husband before. The humble man from the village seemed transformed. His posture remained confident. His voice remained steady. His presence commanded attention. Yet he never raised his tone, never lost control, never appeared threatened. Mason slowly stepped forward. "Tell me, Victor." The room became even quieter. "How many company divisions reported record losses during my absence?" Victor blinked. The question caught him off guard. How many employee benefits were reduced? Mason continued. How many contracts disappeared? How many loyal workers lost opportunities? Now the room felt uncomfortable. Several executives lowered their eyes. Victor's confidence weakened slightly. Mason's voice remained calm. "I may have left, but I never stopped watching." The statement sent shockwaves through the gathering. Victor's expression changed immediately. For the first time, uncertainty appeared. "You monitored the company, every quarter, every report, every major decision." The answer stunned everyone. Even Nyla looked surprised. Mason had never truly abandoned his responsibilities. He had simply chosen to remain unseen. The chairman's gaze swept across the lobby. "Many of you believed I disappeared. That assumption was your mistake." Silence followed. Then one executive began clapping. Another joined. Soon dozens of employees applauded. The sound echoed throughout the building. Victor's face darkened. The power dynamic had shifted. The confrontation ended temporarily. But everyone knew the conflict was far from over. Later that afternoon, Mason led Nyla through the corporate headquarters. Every floor revealed another layer of his hidden world. Large conference rooms, advanced technology centers, executive offices, international operation departments. Hundreds of professionals worked throughout the building. Everywhere they went, employees greeted Mason respectfully. "Good afternoon, Chairman." "Welcome back, Chairman." "We missed you, Chairman." Nyla struggled to process everything. Only months earlier, people laughed at her for marrying a wheelbarrow pusher. Now she walked beside one of the country's most powerful business leaders. The contrast felt unbelievable, yet what impressed her most was not the wealth. It was the respect. Employees genuinely seemed happy to see him. They smiled sincerely. They welcomed him warmly. They trusted him. That trust could not be purchased. It had to be earned. As evening approached, Mason introduced her to several senior managers. One woman named Angela spoke openly. "We worried about him." Nyla smiled politely. "Why?" "Because good leaders are rare." Angela's answer came immediately. "Many people know how to make money. Very few know how to value people." The comment stayed with Nyla. Throughout the tour, she noticed something important. Employees from every level respected Mason. Receptionists, security guards, maintenance workers, managers, executives. Everyone. That kind of admiration could not be manufactured. It came from years of integrity. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, another storm was brewing. Brielle sat inside her luxurious city apartment. The expensive surroundings no longer brought comfort. She stared at article after article. Business publications, corporate profiles, financial reports. Every document confirmed the same painful truth. Mason was extraordinarily wealthy. Far wealthier than Xavier. Far more influential. Far more respected. The realization poisoned her thoughts. How could this happen? She remembered laughing at him, mocking him, humiliating him. Now every memory felt unbearable. Her mother reacted even worse. She barely slept, barely ate, barely spoke. Regret consumed her. Years of cruelty suddenly appeared in a new light. The daughter she mistreated had become the wife of an influential chairman. The daughter she favored had married a man who, while successful, now seemed insignificant by comparison. Jealousy spread rapidly through both women. Neither could escape it. Back at company headquarters, another challenge emerged. The next morning, Mason entered an emergency board meeting. The atmosphere felt tense, hostile, unstable. Large screens displayed financial data. Reports covered the table. Board members filled every seat. Victor sat near the center, waiting. The moment Mason entered, conversation stopped. Everyone watched. The chairman took his seat calmly. Then he reviewed the reports. Several minutes passed. No one spoke. Finally, Mason placed the documents down. Who approved these acquisitions? The question immediately created tension. Victor answered, "The board, without my authorization. You were absent." The response sounded confident, yet several board members shifted uncomfortably. Mason opened another report. "And these contracts? Necessary decisions?" Victor remained defensive. Mason nodded slowly. Then another report appeared on the screen. The room changed instantly. Several directors looked alarmed. Victor's face tightened. Nyla watched from the visitor section. She sensed something significant unfolding. The chairman stood. "For years, I trusted this board." His voice remained controlled. "I believed every decision prioritized the company's future." The screen changed again. More documents appeared. Financial transfers, contract approvals, private agreements, confidential communications. Victor's confidence began crumbling. Unfortunately, some individuals prioritized themselves. Whispers spread around the room. Board members exchanged nervous looks. Mason continued. "Over the last several years, company funds were redirected, assets were manipulated, partnership opportunities were exploited. The evidence filled multiple screens. Nobody could deny it." Victor finally stood. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" Mason pressed a button. Another document appeared. Signed approvals, transfer authorizations, personal accounts. Victor's name appeared repeatedly. The room erupted. Board members shouted. Executives demanded explanations. Security moved closer. Victor's face turned pale. "You investigated me." "No." Mason's response was immediate. "You exposed yourself." The statement landed like a hammer. Years of corruption collapsed within minutes. The board voted quickly, unanimously. Victor was removed. Security escorted him out. As he reached the doorway, he stopped. His eyes locked onto Mason, then shifted toward Nyla. The hatred visible there sent a chill through her body. "This is not over." The threat echoed through the room. Nobody responded. Victor disappeared. Yet something about his final expression felt dangerous. Very dangerous. That evening, after the meeting ended, Mason and Nyla stood near the top floor overlooking the city skyline. Lights stretched across the horizon. Traffic moved below like rivers of gold. The view felt endless. "You handled that well," Nyla said quietly. Mason smiled. "Not everyone agrees. I do." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Mason turned toward her. "Are you happy?" The question surprised her. She looked at the city, then at him, then at the memories of her old life, the insults, the labor, the loneliness, the humiliation. Finally, she smiled. "Yes." For the first time in a very long time. Mason looked relieved, but neither realized that far away, Victor was already planning revenge, and the people he intended to use would shock them both, because his next move would lead directly back to the village, and directly toward the family that once treated Nyla as if she were nothing. Several days passed after Victor's removal from the board. From the outside, everything appeared calm. Company operations stabilized. Investors regained confidence. Employees felt optimistic again. Profits began recovering. The crisis seemed over, yet beneath the surface, danger continued growing. Victor Hale was not a man who accepted defeat. He had spent years building influence, years accumulating power, years positioning himself for control. Now everything had vanished. His reputation was damaged, his authority was gone, his ambitions lay in ruins. And in his mind, one person was responsible: Mason. The bitterness consumed him. Late one evening, Victor sat alone inside a private office overlooking the city. The lights below shimmered through the darkness. Expensive furniture surrounded him, yet none of it brought comfort. His thoughts remained fixed on revenge. Then an idea emerged, slowly, dangerously. A smile appeared, not a pleasant smile, the kind that arrives when someone discovers a weakness. The next morning, several investigators hired by Victor traveled toward Nyla's former village. They gathered information, asked questions, observed people. Within days, they returned with exactly what Victor wanted: detailed reports, family history, relationships, personal conflicts. Most importantly, information about Nyla's stepmother and stepsister. Victor studied the reports carefully. Then he laughed. This might be easier than expected. Meanwhile, Nyla continued adjusting to her new life. Although months had passed since arriving in the city, certain experiences still felt unreal. Luxury apartments, business dinners, corporate events, media attention. She never chased these things, never dreamed about them, never expected them. Yet here she was. What surprised people most was her humility. Despite her position, she treated everyone with kindness. Receptionists, drivers, cleaning staff, security personnel, everyone received the same respect. Employees quickly noticed, stories began spreading throughout headquarters. Mrs. Carter thanked the maintenance team personally. Mrs. Carter visited an injured employee in the hospital. Mrs. Carter helped a worker whose family faced hardship. Admiration grew rapidly, not because she demanded attention, because she earned it. One afternoon, while leaving a company event, Nyla received an unexpected phone call. The number looked familiar, very familiar. She stared at the screen, her heartbeat quickened. It was her father. For several seconds, she hesitated. Then she answered. "Hello?" Silence followed. Then a trembling voice emerged. "Nyla." She recognized it immediately. Her father's voice sounded older, weaker, different. "How are you?" The question felt strange. Years had passed without meaningful concern, years of distance, years of disappointment. Yet she answered politely. "I am well." Another silence followed. Then her father spoke softly. "I would like to see you." The request caught her off guard. "Why?" "Because there are things I should have said long ago." His voice cracked slightly. "Things I should have done." Nyla remained quiet. Emotions stirred inside her, old wounds, old memories, old pain. Eventually she agreed. Several days later, she returned to the village for the first time since her wedding. The journey felt surreal. As their vehicle approached the familiar roads, memories flooded back. The fields, the trees, the dusty paths, the stream where she carried water, everything looked smaller than she remembered. Yet the emotions remained powerful. News of her arrival spread instantly. Villagers gathered along the roads. Many had not seen her since the wedding. They watched with amazement as luxury vehicles entered the community. Some remembered laughing at her, some remembered pitying her. Now they viewed her differently, very differently. Nyla stepped from the vehicle. The crowd immediately greeted her warmly. She smiled politely, asked about families, asked about children, asked about health. Her kindness surprised many people. Success had not changed her. That realization impressed them most. Eventually, she reached her father's home. The compound looked familiar, yet something felt different. The atmosphere seemed quieter, sadder. When her father emerged from the doorway, Nyla barely recognized him. He appeared older, thinner, tired. The years had not been kind. For a moment, neither spoke. Then tears filled his eyes. "My daughter." The word struck her heart immediately. Not Nyla, not girl, not disappointment. My daughter. The affection felt genuine, painfully genuine. Her father approached slowly. "I owe you an apology." Nyla remained silent. He continued speaking. "For years I failed you." His voice shook. "I believed lies. I ignored your suffering. I abandoned my responsibility." Tears streamed down his face. The sight shocked her. She had never seen him cry before. Not like this, not openly, not sincerely. I should have protected you. Instead, I allowed others to hurt you. The regret sounded overwhelming. Years of guilt poured from him, years of shame, years of realization. Nyla felt her own eyes filling with tears. The apology could not erase the past. Nothing could. Yet hearing those words mattered, more than she expected. Her father lowered his head. "Can you forgive me?" The question hung heavily between them. Memories rushed through her mind, the loneliness, the accusations, the neglect, the countless nights spent crying. Every painful moment remained real. Yet so did another truth. Holding anger forever would only create new pain. Slowly, she stepped forward, then embraced him. Her father broke down completely. Years of regret finally escaped. Villagers watching nearby wiped tears from their eyes. The moment felt deeply emotional, powerful, healing. But inside the house, not everyone welcomed the reconciliation. Brielle watched from a window. Her expression hardened, jealousy burned inside her. For months, she had struggled with bitterness. Every article about Mason's company increased her frustration. Every story about Nyla's success deepened her resentment. Now she watched villagers celebrating her stepsister. The attention should have belonged to her. At least that was what she believed. Nearby, her mother appeared equally uncomfortable. Neither woman enjoyed seeing Nyla respected. Unfortunately, their resentment would soon become something much worse. That evening, after Nyla left the compound, Brielle received a phone call, an unfamiliar number. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" A calm voice responded. "I believe we can help each other." Brielle frowned. "Who is this?" The answer chilled the room. "Victor Hale." Her heartbeat quickened instantly. "I know exactly who you are." Victor's voice remained smooth. "And I know exactly who your stepsister is." Silence followed. Then he continued, "I have a proposal." The dangerous smile returned to Brielle's face. Because jealousy often listens when wisdom refuses. Far away, Nyla sat peacefully beside Mason, unaware that two wounded hearts and one vengeful enemy had just formed an alliance. An alliance capable of threatening everything she had worked so hard to build. And before long, their first move would begin. Victor Hale understood something many people overlooked. Greed rarely arrives alone. It often travels alongside jealousy. And jealousy had already taken root inside Brielle's heart. The phone call lasted nearly an hour. By the time it ended, Brielle sat motionless on her couch. The city lights glowed beyond her apartment windows. Luxury surrounded her. Yet she felt completely dissatisfied. Victor had carefully planted dangerous ideas. He reminded her of the wedding, the laughter, the mockery, the humiliation. Most importantly, he reminded her what she believed she had lost. If circumstances had been different, Victor suggested, perhaps Mason would have chosen her. The thought poisoned her mind. It was irrational. It was unfair. Yet jealousy rarely cares about logic. By the following week, Victor and Brielle were communicating regularly. Soon her mother joined the conversations. Together they formed a partnership built entirely upon resentment. Victor wanted revenge. Brielle wanted recognition. Her mother wanted status. Each believed they deserved something that belonged to someone else. Meanwhile, Nyla remained unaware. She continued balancing her new responsibilities. Life in the city remained busy. Company events, community projects, charitable programs, family obligations. Each day brought new challenges. Yet she handled them with grace. Employees admired her. Communities respected her. So, even the media began noticing her influence. One newspaper described her as the heart behind the chairman. Another praised her commitment to helping struggling families. The attention embarrassed her. She never sought recognition. She simply remembered what hardship felt like. One afternoon, Nyla visited a company-sponsored youth center. The building served hundreds of children from low-income neighborhoods. Many lacked opportunities, many lacked support. Many reminded her of herself. She spent hours listening to their stories, encouraging them, laughing with them, sharing meals. Photographs from the event soon spread online. Thousands of people praised her kindness. Unfortunately, those same photographs reached Brielle. Her reaction was immediate. Anger. The comments made everything worse. What a wonderful woman. She is so humble. She deserves every blessing. The praise felt unbearable, because once upon a time, Brielle expected that admiration for herself. Instead, she watched Nyla receive it. The resentment deepened. Victor recognized the change instantly. Good. The more emotional she became, the easier she was to manipulate. Several weeks later, he presented the next phase of his plan. A public scandal. If they could damage Nyla's reputation, they could weaken Mason. If they weakened Mason, they could create instability. And instability created opportunity. The strategy seemed simple, cruel, but simple. Victor arranged interviews through several questionable media outlets. Anonymous accusations appeared online. Rumors began circulating. Stories claiming Nyla had married Mason solely for money. Stories claiming she manipulated him. Stories claiming she pretended to be humble. Most accusations lacked evidence, yet false information spreads quickly when repeated often enough. Within days, social media erupted. Comment sections filled with arguments. Some defended her, others believed the rumors. The attacks intensified. Nyla first learned about the situation during breakfast. A company advisor approached cautiously. "There is something you should see." Several articles appeared on the screen. The headlines shocked her. She read each accusation carefully, then looked up. Who would do this? The advisor hesitated. "We are investigating." Later that evening, Mason reviewed the reports personally. His expression darkened, not because he believed the accusations, because he recognized the strategy. Someone wanted conflict, someone wanted damage, someone wanted attention. The chairman immediately launched an internal investigation. Digital specialists traced sources. Legal teams gathered information. Security personnel reviewed communications. The truth emerged faster than Victor expected. Several anonymous accounts connected directly to individuals working for him. The evidence accumulated rapidly. Yet before confronting anyone, Mason chose patience. He wanted the full picture, not part of it. All of it. Meanwhile, the pressure affected Nyla more than she admitted. Years of hardship had strengthened her, yet public attacks felt different. Strangers judged her, strangers insulted her, strangers questioned her character. One evening, she stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The wind moved gently through the night air. Traffic glowed below. Thousands of lights stretched toward the horizon. Mason joined her quietly. "You are hurting." It was not a question. She nodded. "A little." He stood beside her, then listened, not interrupting, not correcting, simply listening. After several minutes, Nyla spoke. "Why do people enjoy destroying others?" The question lingered between them. Mason considered it carefully. Sometimes people confuse another person's success with their own failure. She looked at him. And when they do, they stop celebrating blessings. They start counting comparisons. The answer felt painfully accurate. Nyla stared at the city, then slowly smiled. "I think I understand." The conversation strengthened her. The attacks continued, but they no longer controlled her emotions. Several days later, Victor made a serious mistake. Confident people often become careless. He assumed his plan was working. He assumed nobody could connect the rumors back to him. He assumed Brielle would remain loyal. He was wrong. During a private meeting, one of Victor's associates secretly recorded their conversation. The recording captured everything: the strategy, the manipulation, the attacks, even Brielle's involvement. When the associate later delivered the evidence to company investigators, the situation changed instantly. Within hours, legal teams reviewed the material. Within days, additional evidence surfaced. Bank transfers, communications, agreements. Every piece strengthened the case. Victor's scheme began collapsing. Yet nobody informed him, not immediately. Instead, Mason waited, patiently, carefully, allowing every detail to emerge. Then came the invitation. A major corporate charity gala. Hundreds of influential guests would attend. Business leaders, investors, government officials, media representatives. Everyone important would be present. Victor received an invitation. So did Brielle. So did her mother. Neither understood why. Both assumed they were winning. Both assumed the rumors had weakened Nyla. Both assumed Mason remained unaware. Their confidence grew. The evening of the gala finally arrived. Luxury vehicles lined the entrance. Photographers filled the sidewalks. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the grand ballroom. Elegant music floated through the air. Guests mingled beneath golden lights. The atmosphere radiated prestige. Victor entered confidently. Brielle and her mother followed. They smiled, socialized, enjoyed the attention, completely unaware that the entire evening had been carefully arranged. Across the room, Mason watched quietly. Beside him stood Nyla, calm, composed, strong. The chairman glanced toward the stage, then toward the guests, then toward the people who had spent months attacking his wife. Everything was ready. The truth, the evidence, the witnesses, all prepared. As the ballroom lights slowly dimmed and attention shifted toward the main stage, Victor smiled confidently. He believed he was about to witness Nyla's public humiliation. Instead, he was walking directly toward his own. The grand ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers. Hundreds of influential guests filled the elegant space. Conversations flowed easily. Laughter echoed softly. Cameras flashed from every direction. Victor Hale felt confident. Very confident. He adjusted his expensive suit and smiled as guests greeted him. Despite recent setbacks, he still believed he controlled the situation. Beside him, Brielle felt equally optimistic. She wore a designer gown worth more than most villagers earned in years. Her mother sat nearby, admiring the luxury surrounding them. For the first time in months, both women felt hopeful. They expected Nyla's reputation to suffer. They expected Mason to become distracted. They expected their plan to succeed. They could not have been more mistaken. Near the front of the ballroom, Mason and Nyla stood together. Neither appeared nervous. Neither appeared angry. Their calmness confused several observers, especially Victor. The chairman should have looked worried. Instead, he seemed completely relaxed. The event host eventually stepped onto the stage. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." The room quieted immediately. "Tonight we celebrate achievement, service, and leadership." Applause followed. The evening began normally. Awards were presented. Community programs were recognized. Outstanding employees received honors. Several speakers delivered inspiring remarks. Everything appeared routine. Then the atmosphere shifted. The host smiled. "Before our final presentation, Chairman Mason Carter would like to address the audience." Polite applause filled the ballroom. Mason walked toward the stage. His expression remained calm, confident, focused. Nyla watched from her table. Something about his eyes suggested a plan already in motion. When Mason reached the podium, silence settled across the room. "Thank you for being here tonight." His voice carried effortlessly. For years, this company has supported communities because of one simple belief: people matter. Many guests nodded. That belief guides every decision we make, every investment, every opportunity, every partnership. The audience listened carefully. Then Mason paused. Unfortunately, not everyone shares those values. The atmosphere changed instantly. Victor felt a small knot form in his stomach. Several executives exchanged knowing glances. Mason continued, "Recently, false accusations targeted my wife." A large screen illuminated behind him. News articles appeared, social media posts appeared, rumors appeared. The audience watched quietly. Many recognized the stories. Some had even discussed them. Mason folded his hands. "Normally, I ignore personal attacks, but when deception threatens innocent people, silence becomes irresponsible." Victor's confidence began fading, only slightly, for now. The screen changed. A series of documents appeared: financial records, communication logs, digital account information. The ballroom grew quieter. Several guests leaned forward. Journalists began taking notes. Mason's voice remained steady. "Our investigation uncovered a coordinated effort to spread false information." The screen changed again. Names appeared. Connections appeared. Evidence appeared. Victor's face lost color. His hands tightened beneath the table. The audience immediately sensed something serious. Then came the recording. A voice echoed through the ballroom speakers. Victor's voice, clear, undeniable. The recording detailed strategy discussions, Manipulation tactics, plans to damage Nyla's reputation, plans to weaken Mason's position. Every word filled the room, every sentence increased the shock. Guests stared in disbelief. Journalists looked stunned. Executives remained motionless. Victor's expression collapsed completely. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no explanation, no excuse, no escape. Then another voice emerged from the recording. Brielle's. The ballroom gasped. Her mother froze. Brielle's entire body stiffened. The recording revealed private conversations, jealous complaints, manipulation, participation in the smear campaign. The truth unfolded publicly, mercilessly. Several guests turned toward Brielle, others looked at her mother. Disappointment spread throughout the room. Not because mistakes were exposed, because bitterness had caused them. Mason ended the recording. Silence followed. A heavy silence, the kind that arrives when truth becomes impossible to deny. Victor suddenly stood. This proves nothing. His voice sounded desperate. The confidence was gone. The authority was gone. Only frustration remained. A senior attorney immediately rose. Actually, it proves quite a lot. Additional evidence appeared on the screen. Bank records, communication histories, witness statements, legal findings. Every detail supported the same conclusion. The scheme was real. Victor's involvement was real. The attacks were deliberate. The audience watched the collapse unfold. Years of reputation vanished in minutes. Several investors quietly moved away from Victor's table. Business leaders avoided eye contact. Friends suddenly disappeared. The isolation happened quickly, very quickly. Then something unexpected occurred. Nyla slowly stood. The room noticed immediately. Many assumed she would celebrate. Many expected anger. Many expected revenge. Instead, she approached the stage. The ballroom watched carefully. Nyla accepted the microphone. For a moment, she simply looked across the audience. Then she spoke. Pain changes people. Her voice remained soft, but every word carried weight. Some people become stronger, others become bitter. The room remained silent. I know what suffering feels like. I know what rejection feels like. I know what humiliation feels like. Several people lowered their eyes because they remembered her story. Yet despite everything, she continued, I refuse to let pain decide who I become. The statement touched the audience deeply. Even journalists stopped writing. They simply listened. Nyla turned slightly. Her eyes briefly met Brielle's, then her mother's, then Victor's. I hope one day all of us learn that another person's success does not steal our own future. The words landed powerfully, not because they were harsh, because they were true. Tears appeared in several eyes throughout the room. The speech lasted only minutes, yet its impact felt enormous. When she finished, silence lingered. Then someone began clapping. Another joined, then another. Soon the entire ballroom rose to its feet. A standing ovation filled the room. Applause thundered from every direction. People were not applauding wealth. They were applauding character, grace, strength, integrity, the qualities that no amount of money could purchase. Meanwhile, Brielle sat frozen. The applause felt unbearable, not because Nyla had won, because deep inside she realized something painful. Nyla deserved it. For years she had mistaken kindness for weakness. Now the truth stood before her, and she could no longer deny it. Security eventually approached Victor. Legal proceedings would follow. Investigations would continue. His influence was finished, his reputation destroyed. As he was escorted toward the exit, he looked back one final time. Hatred no longer filled his eyes, only defeat. The gala continued afterward. Yet conversations focused on one thing: Nyla. Not her wealth, not her position, her character. Late that night, after the guests departed, Mason and Nyla stood outside beneath the city lights. The cool air felt refreshing, peaceful. The worst seemed over. The attacks had failed. The truth had prevailed. The future finally looked bright. Then Mason's phone rang. The call arrived from a private investigator. His expression changed immediately. Serious, concerned, unexpectedly concerned. After ending the call, he remained silent. Nyla noticed. What happened? Mason looked toward the distant skyline, then back at her. The investigation uncovered something we never expected. Her heart tightened. What? His answer sent a chill through the night. It is about your mother. Not your stepmother. Your real mother. The woman everyone believed died with nothing. According to the investigator, that story was never true, and the secret buried for decades was about to change everything once again. The drive home felt unusually quiet. City lights blurred past the vehicle windows while Nyla stared into the darkness. Her thoughts raced endlessly. The investigation, the phone call, the mention of her mother. Nothing made sense. For her entire life, she had believed a simple story. Her mother died poor. Her mother left nothing behind. Her mother had simply disappeared from the world. That was the story everyone repeated. Her father repeated it. Her stepmother repeated it. The villagers repeated it. Now Mason was suggesting something completely different. When they finally arrived home, neither immediately went to sleep. Instead, they sat together in the living room. The atmosphere felt tense, not with fear, with anticipation. Mason placed several folders on the table. The investigator delivered these tonight. Nyla stared at the documents. Her hands trembled slightly. She opened the first folder. Inside were photographs, old photographs, very old photographs. A beautiful woman smiled from every image. Her smile looked familiar. Painfully familiar, because Nyla saw her own face reflected there. My mother. Mason nodded. Several photographs showed large properties, business meetings, community events, professional gatherings. The images did not resemble the life of a poor woman, not even remotely. Confusion filled Nyla's face. There must be a mistake. There isn't. Mason gently pushed another folder toward her. She opened it. Property records, business registrations, financial documents, legal agreements. The evidence continued growing, page after page, year after year. Her mother had been highly educated, successful, respected, financially secure. None of it matched the stories Nyla grew up hearing. Why would anyone hide this? Mason sighed. That is what the investigator wanted to understand. The next document revealed a surprising detail. Several months before her death, Nyla's mother had prepared legal instructions. Specific instructions. Detailed instructions. One name appeared repeatedly. Nyla. Her heart pounded. Everything was left to me? According to these records, yes. Silence filled the room. The revelation felt overwhelming. Years of hardship suddenly looked different. Years of suffering suddenly raised questions. Had her inheritance disappeared? Had someone stolen it? Had someone hidden it? The possibilities felt endless. The investigation intensified immediately. Over the following weeks, attorneys reviewed archives. Researchers searched historical records. Financial experts examined transactions. The deeper they looked, the stranger the story became. Meanwhile, Nyla struggled emotionally. Not because of money, because of deception. Someone had erased her mother's legacy. Someone had rewritten history. Someone had hidden the truth for decades. One afternoon, the lead investigator requested a meeting. His expression appeared serious. Very serious. We found something important. Nyla leaned forward. What is it? The investigator opened a file. According to multiple records, your mother trusted only a few people. One of them was your father. Nyla nodded slowly. That made sense. Then the investigator continued. The second person was your aunt. Nyla frowned. I never had an aunt. The investigator exchanged a glance with Mason. Actually, you do. The room fell silent. What? Your mother's younger sister. She has been alive this entire time. Nyla felt as though the ground shifted beneath her. An aunt? Alive? Why had nobody mentioned her? Why had nobody told her? The investigator slid a photograph across the table. A middle-aged woman smiled warmly at the camera. Her features strongly resembled Nyla's mother. The resemblance was undeniable. Where is she? The investigator smiled slightly. That is the remarkable part. She has spent years trying to find you. Nyla's eyes widened. Trying to find me, for decades. The explanation stunned everyone. According to the investigation, Nyla's aunt believed she had lost contact permanently. False information repeatedly prevented reunions. Letters disappeared. Messages never arrived. Addresses mysteriously changed. Every attempt failed. Someone had deliberately blocked communication. The question was obvious. Who? Several possibilities existed, yet one possibility stood above the rest. The same person who benefited most from Nyla remaining isolated. Her stepmother. The realization felt shocking, cruel, yet disturbingly believable. The following week, arrangements were made. A meeting would finally occur, after decades of separation, after years of misunderstanding, after a lifetime of absence. Nyla barely slept the night before. Questions filled her thoughts. Would her aunt recognize her? Would they connect? Would the reunion feel natural or awkward? The next morning arrived beneath clear skies. A gentle breeze moved through the trees surrounding a private estate outside the city. The setting felt peaceful, beautiful, almost symbolic. As Nyla stepped from the vehicle, her heart raced uncontrollably. Across the garden stood a woman, waiting, watching. Tears already filled her eyes. For several seconds, nobody moved. The resemblance was astonishing. The same eyes, the same smile, the same warmth. Finally, the woman whispered one word. Nyla. The sound of her name carried decades of emotion. The woman rushed forward. So did Nyla. They embraced tightly. Both immediately began crying. Years of separation collapsed within moments. The reunion touched everyone present. Even the investigators struggled to hide emotion. When they finally sat together, stories flowed endlessly. Stories about her mother, stories about family, stories about love, stories about loss. For hours they talked, laughed, cried, remembered, healed. Then late in the afternoon, her aunt revealed another surprise. One final secret. A sealed letter, protected for years, written by Nyla's mother shortly before her death. The envelope appeared aged, fragile, precious. Nyla stared at it. Her hands trembled again. She had spent her entire life wishing for one more conversation with her mother. Now those words waited inside the envelope. A final message, a final gift, a final piece of love crossing decades. As evening sunlight illuminated the garden, Nyla carefully opened the letter. The first lines appeared, written in her mother's handwriting. The moment her eyes reached the opening sentence, tears immediately filled them, because the message began with a truth powerful enough to change everything she believed about herself. And before she finished reading, she would discover the secret her mother had protected all along. The garden remained silent except for the gentle movement of leaves in the evening breeze. Nyla held the letter carefully, almost reverently. The paper felt fragile, precious, irreplaceable. For a moment she simply stared at the handwriting, her mother's handwriting. The sight alone overwhelmed her. Years of longing surfaced at once, years of unanswered questions, years of wondering whether she had truly been loved. Now the answers waited before her. Taking a deep breath, she began reading. My beautiful daughter. The first words shattered every remaining emotional wall. Tears immediately rolled down her cheeks. Across the table, her aunt quietly wiped her own eyes. The letter continued, If you are reading this, then life has taken a difficult path. Please know that I loved you from the moment I first held you. Nothing in this world ever changed that. Nyla struggled to continue. Each sentence felt like a conversation reaching across decades, a mother's voice, a mother's heart, a mother's love. The letter described hopes for Nyla's future. Dreams she would grow strong, dreams she would become kind, dreams she would never allow hardship to harden her spirit. Then came a section that surprised everyone. Your greatest inheritance is not money, it is character. Many people inherit wealth and lose themselves. Very few inherit wisdom and keep it. Nyla paused. The words felt remarkably accurate, especially after everything she had experienced. The letter continued for several pages, stories, advice, memories, expressions of love. Every paragraph felt deeply personal, yet the final section carried the greatest surprise. There is a family trust. Nyla looked up immediately. Her aunt nodded slowly. Keep reading. The trust was established to support future generations. Educational opportunities, community development, healthcare assistance, programs helping struggling families. The fund remained untouched for decades, protected by legal safeguards, preserved exactly as her mother intended. The amount involved was substantial, very substantial, yet what mattered most was the purpose behind it. Her mother never intended the wealth to create privilege. She intended it to create opportunity. The final lines brought fresh tears. If life becomes difficult, remember this. Your value was never determined by how others treated you. Your value was always within you. Never forget who you are, and never stop helping others rise. With all my love. Mother. Silence followed, a profound silence, the kind created by truth, the kind created by love, the kind created by healing. Nyla lowered the letter slowly. Her tears continued falling, yet these tears felt different, not painful, not lonely, not hopeless, healing tears. For the first time in her life, she felt completely connected to her mother's memory. Not through stories, not through rumors, through truth. Several weeks later, news about the family trust became public. Media outlets covered the story. Business leaders praised the vision. Community organizations expressed interest. The announcement generated enormous attention. But something else happened as well. The investigation into past events continued, and eventually difficult truths emerged. Evidence confirmed that Nyla's stepmother had deliberately hidden letters. She had concealed information. She had interfered with family communication for years. The discoveries shocked everyone, especially Nyla's father. The guilt he already carried became even heavier. Meanwhile, Brielle found herself facing a painful reality. Victor's downfall had destroyed their alliance. The public scandal damaged her reputation. Relationships became strained. Opportunities disappeared. For the first time in her life, consequences arrived. Real consequences. One afternoon, she sat alone inside her apartment. The silence felt unfamiliar. No celebrations, no admiration, no attention, only reflection. For months, she had blamed everyone else. Nyla, Mason, the media, the village, fate itself. Yet eventually she could no longer avoid the truth. Many of her problems originated from her own choices. The realization hurt deeply, but growth often begins with discomfort. Several days later, something unexpected happened. Brielle requested a meeting, not with reporters, not with attorneys, with Nyla. When the request arrived, many people advised against it, including some company executives. Even Mason felt cautious, yet Nyla agreed. The meeting took place in a quiet garden cafe. Simple, private, peaceful. When Brielle arrived, she looked different. Not physically, emotionally. The confidence remained, but the arrogance seemed gone. For several moments, neither woman spoke. Finally, Brielle broke the silence. "I do not expect forgiveness." Her voice sounded fragile. The admission surprised Nyla. "I am not here to ask for anything." Another pause followed. Then Brielle looked down. "I just needed to tell you that I was wrong." The words came slowly, painfully. "For years I treated you terribly. I mocked you. I hurt you. I envied you. And I convinced myself it was justified." Tears filled her eyes, but it never was. The apology felt genuine. Not perfect, not magical, not enough to erase history, yet genuine. Nyla listened quietly. Years earlier, she had dreamed about hearing those words. Now they finally arrived. Unexpectedly, she felt calm, not triumphant, not angry. Calm. People make mistakes. Her response remained gentle. The important thing is what happens next. Brielle looked up. Hope flickered briefly across her face. Their conversation lasted several hours. They discussed the past, the pain, the misunderstandings, the jealousy, the family dynamics. Nothing was solved completely. Healing rarely happens that way. But a door opened. A possibility emerged. A future different from the past. As the meeting ended, Brielle stood. "Thank you for coming." Nyla smiled. "Take care of yourself." The exchange felt simple, yet meaningful. Across the city, other lives were changing too. Nyla's father continued rebuilding relationships. Her aunt became a permanent presence in her life. Community projects expanded. The family trust began supporting hundreds of families. Scholarships were created, clinics were funded, educational programs launched, lives improved. Exactly as her mother intended. And as these changes spread across communities, One final chapter quietly approached, a chapter that would bring every lesson together, because soon Nyla would stand before thousands of people, not as a victim, not as a chairman's wife, but as a woman whose journey had transformed countless lives, and the message she would share would become the most important moment of all. The auditorium stretched farther than Nyla could see. Thousands of people filled the seats: students, parents, business leaders, teachers, community organizers, families whose lives had been touched by the programs inspired by her mother's vision. The atmosphere felt electric, warm, hopeful. Outside, sunlight bathed the city in golden light. Inside, anticipation filled every corner of the hall. Nyla stood backstage, holding her mother's letter. The paper had become one of her most treasured possessions, not because of its value, because of its meaning. It reminded her where she came from. It reminded her who she had become. Most importantly, it reminded her what truly mattered. Several organizers approached. "It is time." Nyla smiled softly, then nodded. As she stepped onto the stage, applause filled the auditorium. The sound grew louder, and louder, and louder. Thousands of people rose to their feet. The standing ovation continued for nearly a minute. Many knew her story. Many admired her resilience. Many had personally benefited from the programs she helped create. When the applause finally settled, Nyla approached the podium. She looked across the audience, faces stretched endlessly before her. Some smiling, some emotional, some simply curious. For a moment, she remained silent. Then she began. "There was a time when I believed my life had no value." The room immediately quieted. "I believed what others said about me. I believed I would never matter. I believed I would always remain invisible." Many people nodded, because they understood those feelings more than they wanted to admit. Nyla continued, "I grew up believing I had nothing, no opportunities, no future, no voice. Yet life taught me something important." She paused, then smiled. "The opinions of others do not define your worth." Applause erupted briefly, then faded. She continued speaking. The audience listened carefully. Every sentence carried experience. Every word carried truth. "I learned that kindness is not weakness. I learned that patience is not surrender. I learned that character becomes most visible during hardship." The room remained captivated. Many people recorded the speech. Others simply listened, unwilling to miss a single word. Nyla then shared pieces of her journey: the difficult years, the humiliation, the loneliness, the unexpected marriage, the discoveries, the healing, the forgiveness. Not once did she speak with bitterness, not once did she seek sympathy. Instead, she focused on lessons: growth, purpose, hope. Several audience members openly cried, especially when she spoke about her mother. "My mother left me a message." Nyla carefully unfolded the letter. The room became completely silent. She read a single line: "Your value was never determined by how others treated you." Many people lowered their heads. The words struck deeply, because so many had spent years carrying wounds caused by others. Nyla folded the letter again, then looked across the crowd. "For years I searched for acceptance. Then one day I discovered something." The audience leaned forward. "Acceptance begins with understanding your own worth." Applause filled the auditorium again. Stronger this time, longer this time. When the applause ended, Nyla continued. "Many people spend their lives comparing themselves to others, someone else's success, someone else's appearance, someone else's opportunities, someone else's blessings." She shook her head gently. "Comparison steals joy." The statement resonated immediately. Everyone understood. Everyone had experienced it, at some point, in some form. Nyla smiled warmly. "Your journey belongs to you. Your purpose belongs to you. Your future belongs to you. Never surrender those things because someone else appears ahead." The applause returned once more. As the speech continued, stories followed. Stories of families helped through scholarships, stories of children receiving medical care, stories of students becoming the first graduates in their families, stories of communities transformed through opportunity. Each story reflected her mother's dream. Each story reflected her own mission. Toward the end of the event, the organizers surprised her. A large screen illuminated behind the stage. Photographs began appearing. Her mother, her aunt, her father, Community projects, scholarship recipients, families, children, volunteers, employees, friends. Then one final image appeared. A wedding photograph. The simple wedding. The wheelbarrow, the modest clothes, the beginning of everything. The audience smiled. Some laughed softly, others wiped away tears. Nyla looked toward Mason. He sat in the front row, watching quietly, supporting her just as he always had. Their eyes met. No words were necessary. The entire journey flashed through her mind. The suffering, the hope, the challenges, the victories. Every step mattered. Every lesson mattered. Every wound had contributed to growth. When she reached the final moments of her speech, the auditorium fell silent once more. She took a deep breath, then delivered her closing message. If life is difficult right now, do not give up. If people underestimate you, do not give up. If the road feels lonely, do not give up. You may not control what happens to you, but you can control who you become. The audience erupted. Thousands rose to their feet. The applause felt endless. People cheered, people cried. People embraced one another. The moment felt larger than a speech. It felt like a celebration of resilience itself. Later that evening, after the crowds departed and the auditorium emptied, Nyla stood outside beneath the evening sky. The city glowed around her. A gentle breeze moved through the air. Peace settled over everything. Her father approached first, proud, emotional. Her aunt followed, smiling warmly. Then Mason joined them. Together they looked toward the horizon. Not toward the past, toward the future. The future her mother imagined. The future they would continue building. The future shaped by compassion rather than resentment. By purpose rather than pride. By love rather than fear. For years, Nyla believed she was forgotten. In reality, she was being prepared. Prepared to inspire. Prepared to lead. Prepared to transform lives. And standing beneath the fading sunlight, surrounded by people who truly loved her, she finally understood the lesson that had guided her entire journey. True wealth is not measured by money. It is measured by the lives you touch, the kindness you share, the hope you create, and the legacy you leave behind. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, your viewing location, and share this video.